Welcome to Beyond the Lines, and I'm here with Stu Lloyd, Australian writer and storyteller. Stu, welcome to the show.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
Good to see you. Thanks for being here today. Stu, what brought you to Asia and Bangkok specifically?
Well, advertising work brought me to Hong Kong originally as a very young man all those years ago. And specifically Bangkok, I was working in Hong Kong with the notorious, infamous ad man Mark Kovalevsky, who said, I will give you young lads a tour of Bangkok, which he did. And as they say, if you hang around the pond long enough, you fall in. But from Hong Kong, I was then working and living in Singapore. And from Singapore, I actually bought a beach house in Samui, which gave me the taste for living in Thailand.
What era was this? From when to when, roughly?
Oh, this was mid to late 90s. And so I was spending a bit of time in Samui, which gave me the taste for Thailand in general. Yeah.
What brought you to writing your first book? Hardship Postings, was that the first?
Hardship Posting was indeed my first book.
Yeah.
I got out of the advertising industry. I'd achieved everything I thought I could achieve in advertising. And actually in Singapore at my farewell party, we were throwing the stories around of the good old days, the crazy times, the characters.
Yeah.
And somebody said, wow, somebody should write these down before we forget these and they lost to the ether. And I said, well, I'll be the guy to do that, because that's my next chapter in life, is to be one man and a typewriter versus the world. So I woke up the next morning and Hardship Posting was still a good idea, and the series was born on the back of that.
Hardship Posting took to many cities. It wasn't just Bangkok. Many cities, many situations, many people.
It covers all of Asia, absolutely, and we got really lucky with that. I mean, we were on the bestseller list with volume 1, 2 and 3 in 3 cities. So Bangkok was selling, or Thailand in general was a huge seller, Singapore and Hong Kong. And for many years, it almost became, I hate to say it, embarrassing how ubiquitous it was. It was on every bookshelf and every bookshop. And the interesting thing about that, I've got to thank Nuri Vatachi from the Hong Kong Standard newspaper. And Nuri gave me a blurb for volume 1, which was sleazy, disgusting, and politically incorrect. I loved it. that was his quote. And honestly, I think the blurb probably sold more books than anything else.
They would just have to read it, wouldn't they? You'd have to go there just to see. There's so many places, so many bars and restaurants. Do you think Thailand or Asia, these countries, are a hardship posting anymore? Has it changed a lot?
You know,
certainly probably not as fun.
Some companies, I believe, still treat some cities in Asia as technically a hardship posting, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I actually never felt it was a hardship posting. That was a very tongue-in-cheek cover.
Yeah.
Very tongue-in-cheek. But what's not to enjoy about Asia these days, where you've really got the best of all things available as a lifestyle. Yeah.
Speaking about the military and stuff like that, you have quite an interest in the history of World War II, haven't you?
I do. I've got a massive obsession, I'd call it, with the Japanese campaign in the Second World War, rampaging through Asia.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, came to a head many years ago, and I visited so many war sites around Asia in my travels, and took part in quite a few of the Death March reenactments and things like that, and eventually sat down to tackle a military history, which was really scary.
Yeah, huge subject to take on.
It was. I was really worried about what I call the train spotters. With military history, if you get a badge wrong, an insignia wrong, a wrong regiment, a wrong rank, people are going to come out of the woodwork and hammer you. But thankfully, I got the all clear from one of Australia's eminent historians, and she gave it the all clear in terms of the fact checking, and the book was very, very well received. And that's, the missing years. And that really covered the story, based on the story of a British rubber planter who then found himself in the middle of the war, very close to his rubber estate in Seremban in Malaysia, shot in the shoulder by a Japanese sniper, evacuated to Singapore, lived through the Alexandra Hospital massacre, and that was just his starter for 10. From there, of course, then came the POW stuff and the Death Railway. So he had a hell of a war. It's the little episodes that I think make it. I think George MacDonald Fraser, aka Flashman, he actually served in Burma, and he made this point. He said it's the little things. You talk about 5,000 people massed on a hill, but he said what you don't hear about or read about is there's a guy with blisters on his feet or bends down to tie up a shoelace and just misses a sniper's bullet or something like that.
Or catches one in the shoulder.
Yeah, or catches one in the shoulder, exactly.
Incredible.
So what I've actually done is I've zoomed into one of the episodes in The Missing Years, which is called Bleeding Slaughterhouse. And this is going to be the first definitive treatment of the Alexandra Hospital massacre in Singapore, in which arguably 300 people, doctors, patients, were slaughtered in cold blood, I mean, on operating theatres and things like that. And the terrible thing about that, it was a massive cover-up, I think, by the British government, because if you look at the official history of the British wartime World War II story, there is not even a mention of that hospital, and it was the biggest military hospital outside of Britain. There's not even a mention of that in the index of their official war history.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of things omitted from history.
Conveniently, the victors write the history.
Now, Stu, Gone Troppo, what's it all about?
Gone Troppo, that was really my search for paradise, or put another way, getting a publisher to pay me to travel around the world, to go to all the tropical paradises, and come to the conclusion whether or not paradise actually exists as a concept. To me, yes, there was one particular place which does, and that absolutely gripped me. I felt such a wonderful sense of place in the Cook Islands, in the South Pacific. Absolutely, I felt I belonged there. I actually felt I'd been there before, and it was so moving. The music, the Polynesian music, the Polynesian dancing, just the very simple, happy, everyday existence of the folks. And
sounds great.
Beautiful fish and
incredible. Great stuff. Stu, workshops and storytelling. Tell me, you're very involved in storytelling workshops. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting, when I look backwards, I guess, rather than forwards at my work and my career, it all started, I have a school report from Mrs. Greenwood, who was my teacher at kindergarten in Zimbabwe, at the Waterfalls Kindergarten there. And in my school report from that year, she said, Stuart loves stories. So very, very prescient was our Mrs. Greenwood. And yeah, you know, my career has taken me into some really interesting areas. Advertising was obviously my formative career. And from there into the journalism, the travel writing, the marketing, the magazine, newspaper features, things like that. We talked about the missing years, the World War II history. That then gave rise to a really wonderful period of leading special interest military history tours through Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. And honestly, to me, that was the most fulfilling work that I've ever done, where you're connecting families of veterans of prisoners of war with their own family story and giving them that closure of what happened to their father, what happened to their Uncle Fred, in this particular patch of mud in the Thai jungle, for instance. And from there, that's then segued into storytelling, now more in the corporate sense. Storytelling's become a big thing in the corporate world, and under the brand of, well, Cat Mat Dog. I just happen to be wearing the T-shirt. What are the chances of that? What a great coincidence. And so I guess I've been propelled forward into the corporate world, I guess marrying my 30 years of being at the intersection of creativity and commerce and of storytelling, and now bringing that into the corporate world, whereby marketers, brand storytellers can now use storytelling really as a way of creating a point of difference for their brand, living, breathing, feeling what their brand is all about, and articulating that in a really distinctive way to the marketplace.
What would be Stu Lloyd's advice for an up-and-coming writer coming on the scene, trying to get a publishing deal and release his first book?
I think the best advice I can give to anybody, whether you're a young writer or just anybody, is this, a lesson I learned quite recently, which is never have a vasectomy and buy a new motorcycle in the same week. But
It's a good lesson.
it's a life lesson.
You could write about it though.
Yeah. But in terms of writers specifically, or storytellers in general, I think you've just got to read a lot. You've got to absorb life. You've got to absorb all of life and bring all those dots to join, to bear on the work that you're doing. And many, many years ago, I had a girlfriend, actually a Filipina creative director, who wrote a poem for me called The Collector. And in that poem, she said, well, the point of this is that, you know, life is a collection of experiences. And I thought about it, and I thought, you're right. What else is life if it's not just a collection of experiences? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing. You've got to live, you know, life, as I say, life is short, live it wide.
Is there any footage of you storytelling?
There are a number of talks and keynotes and training things that I've done. Probably some book signings, little snippets and things which are on YouTube. So
Okay,
if you put in
great.
Stu Lloyd, I think some stuff comes up. But
Okay, great.
yeah, under Cat Matt Dog and also under Hotheads.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff out there. And,
Yeah, great. Stu Lloyd, thank you so much for being on Beyond the Lines. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Sawadee Kap.